Honestly, I think I would die in a quiet place because my knees crack so hard sometimes, and like I'd just be like walking on the sand or whatever that John Krasinski laid all over the place, and then they'd be like, my knees would be like, crack, and then I'd die, or I'd probably just fall, but I'd probably die in a quiet place. But that is not the point. What's up? Welcome to another video. This week I will be talking about the movie A Quiet Place, starring John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, and these two amazing child actors that I do not know the names of, but they were phenomenal as well. And in this video I'm going to start out by first addressing 5 criticisms that I have heard about the movie that I think are wrong and bad. Because, yeah, I'll explain it later. And then I'm going to talk about why I really liked the movie and point out some things that I thought were super cool about the movie and some great scenes that I really liked about this movie, that were some scenes that I really liked in this movie. And yeah, so that's what we're going to do today. So stick around if you're interested in that. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that stuff. And yeah, let's go. One of the number one criticisms that I've heard about A Quiet Place, which is, I don't want to say it's unfounded because it makes sense, is why on earth would you bring a child into this world, like, under the circumstances? And I get it, but I don't feel like they meant to, on purpose, bring a child into the world. Like, I think they just fucked and they didn't have a condom and that she got pregnant. My question is more not why would you bring a child into the world, but how did they fuck in this world? Because that should be making noise, like it makes me wonder, because they have that like underground, like in their house they have that underground like quieter place like that John Krasinski built for, he built it for the baby that was about to come, but like, did they go down there? Is it like their sex dungeon? Like, how did they do that? They must have been really careful. Like, that shit would have taken a lot of planning to execute, like, super quiet, which is kind of funny to think about. But like, I guess they were horny and they were like, let me get some fuck, but yeah, I don't think that the criticism of like, oh, why would they bring a child into the world? Like, I don't think that takes away from the movie, like, you're questioning it, but like, do you honestly think that like with all the preparations that they've made, like soundproofing their farm, that they were like, oh yeah, it would be a great idea to like have another kid, especially when we're mourning the loss of our youngest son? Like, I don't know. Seems a little fishy to me. I just think that it was an accident. Another criticism I heard about this movie was that it was boring. And, in fairness, I did hear it from 2 15-year-old boys, but I still heard it. And to that I say, you are incorrect. It was not boring, because I was very afraid during most of the movie. Part of me couldn't wait for it to end because I was so scared, but I didn't want it to end because it was very good and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I could not take the suspense and the horror. So yeah, no, it was not boring. Third criticism of this movie that I heard a lot actually was people were saying that it wasn't a horror movie, it was more of a suspense movie or thriller. And like, I don't understand this as a point of criticism, because I don't see how it could really have detracted that much from your movie watching experience. I personally found it really, really scary. The situation they were in was horrible. the monster and the suspense they built up whenever the aliens were around was a lot. There is a lot of tension in this movie. And for me, that tension was it makes you feel very anxious, and you're like, oh shit, because you don't want anything bad to happen to the family. You know, you're rooting for them. And I think that people who were like, this isn't a horror movie, I'm just kind of like, what more did you want out of it so that it was a horror movie? Like, why did you feel like it wasn't a horror movie? Were there not enough jump scares? Like, do we quantify a horror movie versus a thriller, like, based on the number of jump scares? Because if that was the case, then I guess I see what you're saying. But I feel like a lot of the times jump scares are kind of cheap in horror movies, and they're overused. And I feel like A Quiet Place was definitely the first horror movie I've seen in a while where there's actually like depth to it. I feel like it's more of a film than a movie, you know what I mean? Like the difference between just a book and a novel. Like I feel like this was a film because of the depth of characters, the depth of the plot, etc. But yeah, I don't understand the criticism where it's like, oh yeah, like it wasn't really a horror movie, it was just a thriller. Because the other thing is that when I think of a thriller, I think of Silence of the Lambs and I think of Gone Girl. And I think the reason for that is that, in my opinion, a thriller is a movie where the tension comes from things that are more possible in real life. And like it has to do a lot with psychological horror rather than like an axe murderer or a chainsaw massacre kind of a thing. But I guess then again there are other horror movies that do still play on the human psyche, where somebody goes mad and like kills a bunch of people or something like that. But I feel like thrillers just have a lot to, you know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, I don't really understand that as a criticism because it was still a really, really good movie. And whether or not it's a thriller or a horror movie, I personally don't think it matters. Like, it shouldn't have to fit into one category. Like, and I know it advertised itself as like the horror movie of our generation. Like, I get that, but like that was trying to draw you to go see it, right? And it drew you to see it, and you saw it, and now everybody's talking about it. So, you know, I think they achieved what they were going to achieve, which was to get people to see their movie. And I don't think that it necessarily matters whether or not it's a horror movie or a thriller because it was a good movie and I was scared during it, and both types of movies are scary. So yeah, I just don't understand where people are coming from with that criticism, and I don't see the need to really have to categorize the genres. Like sometimes genres can bleed into each other, and that's okay. So the fourth thing, which I also heard from the 15-year-olds, was that there was a lack of good character depth, and I was like, what? Yes, there was. I mean, except maybe with the exception of like the younger brother, but like everybody, that's not even true. Everybody had a character arc. You had John Krasinski, who played the father, and his main mission is to protect his family. And, you know, he loves his family and he's just trying to protect them. Like, that's his whole thing. Emily Blunt is the mother who, again, they're just trying to protect their children. That's most of their characterization. But, you know, there's definitely depth there because, you know, they're grieving the loss of their son. They have to grieve in complete silence. The mother is only able to sob once she's in the little bunker that the father created so that the baby was able to cry. They didn't even talk about it, I don't think, for ages, because I think because she was pregnant and she couldn't have gone over to the waterfall. Like, there were a lot of really beautiful moments between the husband and the wife. John Krasinski's acting was phenomenal. Like, you could really feel his worry and his anguish and like his desire to protect his family and just how much he loves and cares about them. Like, I think that really shone through. And then the daughter, oh my gosh, like she actually does have a very strong character arc. Like, she starts out like, you know, she's just trying to look out for her little brother. She thinks that it's stupid that like her parents won't give him the little airplane in the beginning, so she gives it to him, trying to be a good big sister. And like, you know, normally that would be okay, but you know, because it's a quiet place world, like it's not, because the airplane makes sound, which again, she might not have known because she's deaf. But regardless, and then, you know, ultimately it's kind of her fault that her younger brother gets killed because he plays with the airplane, which makes a sound, and the alien comes and kills him right before all of their eyes. She then feels that it's, you know, her fault. She feels like her parents don't love her anymore because she got her brother killed, which causes her to act out. Because she is an adolescent, she is a teenager, which, like, can you imagine having like a 13-year-old in a quiet place world? She can't even yell and like slam doors or anything, so she has all this frustration bottled in with like inside of her. But in the end, she becomes the most powerful character. You know, she is able to use her hearing aid to kill them, like to really irritate the monsters, which allows her mom to be able to shoot them in the end. She saves her brother's life. Yeah. And then the brother is softer, you know, he's still a little boy. He's very afraid of the whole thing, which is understandable, because can you imagine being a little kid in that kind of a world? And he's not as willing to go learn things like the hunting and the fishing and that sort of thing. But, you know, ultimately he becomes very brave, and, you know, he is able to go light off the fireworks and that sort of thing, and he's able to save his sister when she falls into the corn after saving him. And, you know, there's lots of characterization, I think. So yeah, that criticism, probably it's because the two people I heard it from are very young, so maybe they didn't quite get it as much. I think they were looking more for something like Truth or Dare, which already has a 4 out of 10 on IMDb, despite it not having come out yet. Fantastic, but we're not here to talk about that movie. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of strong characterization in this movie. So I think that criticism is invalid. We have number 5, which is, a lot of people found the hearing aid thing really dumb, which I don't agree with. So when people say that the hearing aid thing was dumb, they're talking about basically like, why hadn't anybody else come up with this before? Like, why hadn't the government done this like on a much larger scale? Some people were arguing that this should have been the first thing that the government like tried. Some people were saying that, well, why wouldn't the family have tried this? Like, are they so stupid and stuff? And I get where people are coming from with the government aspect of it, you know, like, but at the same time, we don't know what happened before. We don't know how exactly society collapsed beforehand. I think, like, the movie starts about 50 days in or something like that, if I remember right. I'm probably wrong, but it starts about a month or two into, like, the whole, like, aliens running the world thing, I assume, and towns are already abandoned. Like, in the first scene, like, they're able to just walk into a pharmacy, get the medicine they need. The place looks ransacked. Like, society has clearly collapsed. We don't know the state of the government. They don't seem concerned with the state of the government. They seem more concerned with preserving their own family rather than trying to figure out the world's problems. So I think the other reason for this is that there's so much, like, there's so many movies and so much, like, I feel like literature where it's like, well, you know, the protagonist of a movie has to go and, like, solve the world's problems. You know, take a franchise like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example. Like, you know, they're all superheroes, so of course they have to solve the world's problems, and, like, the problems that they face are on a much grander scale than the problems that everyday people face. Take, like, most action movies, for example, like Taken, you know, like, I mean, I haven't seen Taken, but, you know, I know the gist where, you know, the dad has to go fight, like, the Albanian mafia in order to save his daughter. Like, that kind of stuff doesn't happen all the time, most of the time. I mean, I don't think it happens. But what I find really interesting and compelling about this movie is that instead of focusing on the grander scheme of things, like focusing on the global or the national scale sort of thing, or even like a citywide scale, like, they focus on the family. They focus on regular, everyday people just trying to survive this horrible, horrible, horrible situation. And I think that's what makes it a really good movie, because you become very, like, personally connected to these people. You don't want anything bad to happen to them because, you know, you're rooting for them. And I feel like if they had this, like, side plot where it was like the government's like beep 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 beep, like, we're figuring out this big ass weapon, beep 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 beep, and then it was like flashback to the family on the farm, like, it would have totally taken away from the meaningfulness of the actions that took place on the farm. Like, you know, John Krasinski ultimately sacrificing himself for his family. Like, oh my god, that scene. I'm gonna talk about that scene in, like, a hot second. But, like, all these scenes where it's very emotional and has to do with a lot of personal connections, I feel like would be lost if they focused on, like, the government, you know, trying to figure out what was going on. And the other thing is that we only know as much as the family knows, so I think that's what makes it even scarier, because you are also trapped on the farm with them. You are also facing the same kinds of unknowns that they're facing. Like, there's nothing that they know that you don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah. I thought the hearing aid thing was cool. I thought that, you know, it was the first thing that had ever happened to the family since this whole horrible thing had happened, where they felt they had the power to fight back. They felt like they had hope. Like, the mom looked like she was, like, ecstatic when she figured out that the hearing aid thing. And to people who are like, why didn't they try this earlier? They were trying not to make noise. They spend the whole entire movie trying to not make a fucking sound. Like, why would they have tried to do something like a high-pitched noise where they could have possibly attracted aliens to them? They're not going to be taking risks like that. They're trying to preserve themselves and preserve their family and just try to, like, survive as best as they can. They're not going to be doing shit like that. So yeah, I thought the hearing aid thing was cool. And alright, so now that we've got the criticisms out of the way, I'm going to talk about some of the scenes that I really liked. The first scene that I gotta talk about, because, wow, was actually, well, I should say two scenes, because it was kind of the parallel that really made it work. So there's this scene where John Krasinski and his son are walking through the forest, coming back from fishing, and they come across this dead old woman in front of this house. And then they see this old guy, and he's just standing there, like, after finding his dead wife. Or it's insinuated that it's his wife anyway. And he's, like, just staring there, like, blank face, and you don't know what's going to happen, because first of all, this is the only other person that you've come into contact with in this movie, so you don't really know what's, like, how people are interacting with each other in this world. And then John Krasinski realizes that this guy's about to scream, and he takes his kid, he fucking picks him up, runs really fast, and this guy lets out this blood-curdling, anguished scream, because this guy can't live without his wife, basically. And it's like this act of suicide. And it's really tragic, and it's really scary, because you don't know if, like, the alien is about to hurt, John Krasinski and his son. And it's really cool. It's so cool. And, like, I mean, it's not cool, but it's, like, it's awful, but it's, like, a really cool scene. And later on, in the end of the movie, when the alien is rocking the car back and forth with the two kids in it, John Krasinski, he drops his weapon, and he sign languages to his kids that he loves them very much, especially to his daughter, because his daughter didn't think that he loved her. And he lets out the same kind of scream that the old man let out, and it's, like, literally, it's so horrible, but, like, it's such a great scene, because it's, like, the ultimate self-sacrifice. Like, he sacrificed himself for his children in this, like, grand act of basically suicide, and it's incredible. I'm, like, tearing up a little bit. I cried really hard. First of all, because I wasn't expecting Jim from The Office to get fucking murdered in this movie. I was like, Jim, no. But yeah, it was a really good scene. I also really liked, basically any scene that John Krasinski was in was great. There was a scene where his wife was giving birth, and, like, she was on her own. She was in the bathtub giving birth, and the thing is, like, following her because she made a sound, and it cuts to, like, John Krasinski entering the house, and you don't know if the thing is still there or not. And he goes into the bathroom, and all he sees is, like, the blood in the bathtub, because we think, like, we're pretty sure it's because she was just after giving birth, like, it showed her bleeding, and then there's, like, this moment where he thinks that it took her, and he, like, looks like he's about to fucking throw up, and, like, he's mourning in, like, the most silent and, like, anguished way possible. And then it turns out that she's in the shower, and, like, this moment of relief on his face is, like, it's incredible. I think it also helps that, like, Emily Blunt is, like, his wife in real life, so I feel like he's really able to, like, imagine, like, what he'd, like, the emotions he'd go through if his wife actually died. Yeah. Great scene. There's also the other scene that I really thought was good, which was when the daughter is in the cornfield looking for her brother, and the alien, like, comes behind her, and it's doing this, like, there's this cool thing that they do whenever it's showing from the perspective of the daughter, because she's deaf, it goes completely silent. There's not even, like, any sounds of, like, the monster moving behind her. So, like, she's facing the camera, and it's completely silent, and you just see the thing, like, creeping up behind her, and she has no idea, and you're like, oh, no. It was really cool. But yeah, like, I could go on and on, but I really, really recommend this movie. It was really good. It's only, like, an hour and a half long, so, like, it's not that long. It was incredible. I would say, take the criticisms with a grain of salt. because I personally feel like some people just, it's so much easier to criticize a movie than to praise it. And I don't think that this movie deserved the amount of criticism that it got, because I think it's a really, really fantastic movie. I mean, obviously it's not perfect. There are some, universe inconsistencies, but they're so minor that it's fine. And it's best to, like, while you're watching it, like, just not to think too hard about it. And it's, like, okay to wonder after the fact, like, how does this work? How does this work? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But, yeah, I would just say, take the criticisms with a grain of salt. Don't let a lot of these, YouTuber reviewers, like, influence how you think about movies, especially if you've already seen it and you really liked it like I did. Like, that's okay. You don't have to agree with it. Also, you don't have to agree with me either, but yeah. So I would recommend it. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.